nailing me. But also, in addition to allergies, today I got my second dose.
Mazel tov. How
So
you feeling so
I'm
far?
feeling good. I'm feeling good. I asked the guy, I asked him, what should I expect? I went to U of L, so it's like the whole thing. I was trying to explain to my daughters, they couldn't understand. Got a shot. Yeah, I stayed in my car. I was in my sleep. It's like they don't. What? Yeah, like there's like 100 people around me. So I asked him, how am I going to feel? So he said, yeah, most of it, these seed is psychological. If you think you're going to get sick or be sick, then that's what's going to happen. I'm like, okay. So far, so good.
Which vaccine did you get?
Pfizer.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty mild on the side effects, they say. So
yeah, I think they said the second one, if you didn't get it, if you did get it, either way, as of right now, I'm feeling okay. So
I got the Chinese vaccine, so I mean it was it's kind of rough. But
it's funny. But so far you're okay. When do you think you guys
you get that one over at Spalding? There's only like 3 rows of cars, and I don't know. I saw some signs. I'm not sure. I mean, it may have been a bad idea.
Amazing. When I know this class is very unique. That it's on Zoom. It's half an hour ish in or out. Do we ever see this class getting in person sometime, or is that too difficult at this time in the evening? You don't have to answer me right now, obviously, but I think something to consider moving forward eventually. If there is, even we could do it maybe once a month almost. We could do Zoom, but it's going to be good to maybe a little bit make more of a gathering out of it, have some time before.
Yeah.
When that time comes, right? Okay, awesome.
I'm on board.
Amazing. Okay, great.
Only if there's going to be bourbon.
Oh, Brian, there we go. There will be bourbon. I can guarantee you that. Right now I'm just sipping tea, and you can tell.
I'll bring it.
Because of this. One time I did have a class, by the way, and I was kind of in the mood for a beer.
Are you having a hot toddy?
This is just a regular tea. So just for my voice. Okay. All right, guys. So this class, I don't know if anybody saw the intro. This class for me is very special. This class to me has I think of this, say Devar Torah, this lesson I think about often. Now it happens to be, as I did that, I clearly did not prepare from that chumash, because that chumash is missing pages. It happens to be missing the page of the class. So I'll open up this one. So last week we ended up, where Avram did perform a circumcision on himself. And I think medically they prove, and it brings down the Talmud, that the third day of recovery is the hardest day of recovery. And the next parsha, we finished, we hopped around the parsha of Lech Lecha last week. We finished Lech Lecha. Obviously, we didn't do every single verse, but the point is we went to the highlights. Certainly, there's so much more. But next year, we'll do it over again. We make our way around the entire Torah. We'll come back and we'll fill in the gaps. So this week, this parsha is called Vayera. Vayera is appeared. He appeared. And who appeared? Hashem appeared. Hashem appears in this week's parsha to Abraham. And I think next week we're going to discuss exactly why is Hashem appearing to Abraham? What are the many lessons we learn from God's behavior over here? That's going to be put off for next week. This week we're going to focus in on a very interesting detail that the verse spells out. Obviously, the Torah dictated by God to Moses is very particular in the words. I ramble. When I need to say one thing, I'll say 20 things because I'm trying to find the right words. I don't have the right words. But obviously, when God is communicating, every word is concise. Every word has a meaning, a purpose. God doesn't stutter. He doesn't mix words. He doesn't tell you unnecessary details. Sometimes we know where people are. Oftentimes we don't know their location because it's irrelevant. Only things that are relevant need to be communicated to us in the Torah, in the book of life. So the verse starts off that Hashem appears to Abraham, and it tells you where. Where is Abraham? Where is God appearing to Abraham? The Torah says Elonei Mamre, which translates as the plains of Mamre. This guy Mamre. The rest of the verse, while Abraham was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham sitting at his tent, it's at the heat of the day, and God appears to him in the plains of Mamre. And the Medrash and everybody wants to know and understand, who is Mamre? Why is God visiting to Abraham on the plains of Mamre? What's the backstory here? What's going on? So the Medrash is quite amazing. The Medrash tells us the backstory. And I'm not going to share the screen. I'm just going to kind of read it loosely and translate it fully. So it says that God tells Abraham to do the circumcision. So Abraham had 3 friends. He had 3 close friends who he always went for advice. So he went to his friends. His friends were who? There was Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, 3 buddies. And he went to them and he said, listen, guys, God just gave me this, told me to do this. What do you think I should do? Right? Fair question. I think, maybe a little surprising that Abraham would have asked such a thing, and we'll see exactly what's going on. So 2 of his friends, Aner and Eshcol, they say as follows. He says, you're 100 years old, Abraham. Why do you got to go and pain yourself like this? Eshcol says, it's dangerous. You're gonna get hurt. Your enemies, they're gonna come and get you. You're gonna weaken yourself. Don't do this. Those are his 2 friends. Mamre comes along. What does Mamre say? He says, Elokecha she'el malacha b'kif shena'esh, the God that protected you from the fiery furnace, that saved you from death, u'malachim, and from the war of the kings, u'bere'avon, and with hunger and the famine, that God that saved you from those situations, so he asked you to circumcise. He's not going to save you. He's not going to help you. He's not going to protect you. You should do it. And they say Mamre comes from a certain language of he was brazen. He was brazen as Abraham, right? He didn't buckle. He wasn't a yes man like his 2 other friends. Yo, don't do it, Abraham. No, you should do it. So Hashem says, Chayecha, a certain word of promise. I promise, says God, She'eni nigla alav lo b'palda she'aner. I'm not going to reveal myself in the palace of Aner. And I'm not going to reveal myself by Eshcol, only in yours. I'm going to visit Abraham in yours because of the fact that you encouraged, you inspired, you advised Abraham to do the circumcision. It's yours. That is the simple understanding of the Medrash. There's a commentary called the Divrei David, the Divrei David, who was way, I want to say, I'm not sure how many hundreds of years ago. I should have Googled beforehand. He's more recent than the Medrash. Medrash is, thousands of years ago. More recent commentary, racing probably within the last 200 years. I should check that afterwards just to confirm. He asked the question, he says, it doesn't make sense. This Medrash, when you simply read it, doesn't make any sense. And maybe we're wondering the same thing. Abraham, God has commanded you to do all kinds of crazy stuff. God just told you, God says, Abraham, you got to circumcise yourself. Abraham's like, I'm not sure. Maybe not. Let me ask my friends, your friends who tell you, here, friends, God told me to do this. Should I do it? Yes or no? They're like, nah, don't do it. He said, it doesn't really make sense. How could it be that Abram would simply not listen to God? You see, God says, sacrifice your son. Okay. Not sure. Maybe not. So he does some research, and I'm not going to bring down this. He finds different sources of the Medrash that explain that really the nature of the circumcision wasn't, you have to do this because I said so. It was not a direct commandment. As we learned last week, there was an agreement. There was a two-way street. It was a covenant. And the way the Medrash brings it down earlier, basically God says, listen, I want to keep the world going. The world goes through the Torah, to the Jewish people, through you. We could sustain the world and keep it going if you do the bris milah, if you do the circumcision. If you choose not to, you could choose not to. I'm not commanding you, but we can't really keep the world going. It's your choice, Abraham. This is not a commandment. I didn't say that thou hast to have a circumcision. It was a give or take. If you do the circumcision, this is what it will be. As he breaks down over here, he says as follows. He says, it was a reshus. It was an option. You have an option. It's optional. Now you get great benefits if you decide to take up the option. And if you don't take the option, there's some serious consequences. But it is an option. You do have a choice. I'm not forcing you. It's not a commandment. If you get sacrificed, the world will be established. If not, it won't. And therefore, he said, listen, friends, buddies, God presented me with this option. What should I do? Should I take up the option? Should I drop the option? Baseball player, right? Listen, you take up the option, you get you get a contract extension. You don't, nobody's going to sign you. You have a player option. Player option when you're done, right? Trust me, if Albert Pujols at the end of the career has a player option for 2 more years, he's signing the contract because he's done. He gets another contract. You're not getting another morning for the rest of your life. So he asked his friends, what should I do? So 2 of his friends tell him, it's not worth it. You're going to get hurt. You'll be in danger. The third friend says, don't worry. God will protect you. And that is how the Divrei David explains this medrash. So I heard this medrash was it's brought down in a book here that I have here. This book is it's called the Chiddushei Halev, Insights of the Heart. And what we do in general when we learn Torah is we try to glean something, some life lesson. We talk about Jewish values, Torah values, right? The Torah has so much wisdom in it. How do we extrapolate, glean the wisdom? Torah is the book of life, right? It's the blueprint. How should we live our lives? So where you read verses? Where do we see? How do we do that? So let's think about this minute for a second. We got the context. So Rabbi Henoch Leibowitz Zatzal, who passed away 2000, he was the head of my yeshiva for many years, for decades. So he thinks about it for a second, and he says it's really almost hard to understand. But let's see if we can understand it. God says, listen, Abraham, you have an option. You pick up the option, the world goes on. You don't pick up the option, the world goes away. Abraham's like, you know what? I don't know. What in the world does that mean? Abraham, do you care about the world? If you don't do this, the world goes away. What do you mean you don't know? What do you mean you're not sure? I don't know. Maybe it's not safe for me. It's safe for you. Like, guess what's also not safe for you? No world. That's also not safe for you. But what does that mean? That you're not going to do this? It doesn't make any sense. What in the world is Avram's hesitation? And what in the world is Mamre being praised for giving this encouragement? It's a no-brainer. What is the hesitation going on here? What is happening? Do anyone want to take a stab at it? It's a pretty intense question. Obviously, we're working with a certain assumption. This is the Torah. Like there's truth here. What is the truth?
Well, I know nothing about this. I'll just throw out, he wasn't sure that, the world really would come to an end.
Okay.
If he didn't.
I can, right. I can, yeah. So I can hear what you're saying.
But I understand that's probably
right.
probably contradicted by the fact that everything else that God has ever told him has proven to be accurate and credible. So I'm not very confident about that theory. Another one would just be a visceral reaction to maiming yourself that way when this has never been done before in history. He just can't get his head around that. So he has to ask other friends to get comfortable with it.
Right. Yeah. Seek a certain amount of advice. So clear. I would say it's I think very understandable points you're making. I would first say a certain given that we have to work with is that Abraham believes in God. Right? God's not pulling a fast one over him. Like, there's a certain understanding that there's not empty threats. I don't think if it is even a threat, but I think something we have to come in with a certain given that what God says to Abraham and when Abraham hears from God is the truth. And there's no, I don't think so. And he goes to his friends and the advice is, don't worry, your concerns are legit, says Mamre. Like these are legit concerns, but God will protect you like he's done before. So overcome them. Like that's really the message that Mamre sends that kind of puts him over. So a explanation, an insight that I glean from this as follows. Who cares about the world more? Or better, whose responsibility is the world? What is Abraham's responsibility? Who is he responsible for? Who does he have to watch out for? Who does he have to be careful for? What does the Torah expect a human being to do? There's a verse in the Torah that says that the mitzvos, you have to live by the mitzvos, by the commandments, by the laws. You're not allowed to kill yourself, right? If somebody is a Sabbath observer, he observes Shabbos, and they find himself in a dangerous situation, a life-threatening situation, the law is you break the Shabbos. You violate the Shabbos. The Torah doesn't expect a person, it does not want a person to endanger his life for the Torah. Now, there are obviously the exceptions when somebody says worship idols or die. So there are three exceptions. The three, I don't know if cardinal sins is a Jewish saying, but the three cardinal sins. Somebody asked, bring them bound unto idols to get involved in an illicit relationship. Adultery, idols, and murder. Those three things, a person says, it's not just adultery. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Any illicit relationships, there's specific relationships that are major no-nos. So those three things, somebody puts a gun to your head and says, do this or die, we have to give up our lives. But outside of that, when it comes to the Torah, we don't give up our lives. And even more than that, you'll find a concept called ends justifying the means. And you'll find probably a debate out there if that is true or not. Do ends justify the means? Robin Hood, right? Everybody quotes Robin. Everybody loves Robin Hood. Is Robin Hood a good guy? Robin Hood a bad guy, right? Well, he did great. He did bad. What did he do? So the Torah says, thou shalt not steal. You're not allowed to steal. But what about the poor people? These poor people, they have no money. These rich people have too much money. I'm going to steal from the rich and give to the poor. Hashem says, thou shalt not steal. You're not allowed to steal. But what's it going to be with the poor people? Do you know what God says? I care about the poor people more than you. The poor people are my responsibility. The poor people are not your responsibility. I'm in charge of the world. It is my world. It's not our obligation to worry about the world. Well, let me rephrase that. We do worry about the world, but within the way we are told to live our lives, right? I care about poor people, right? You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to risk my life to try to make sure a poor person has money. I'm going to endanger my life on the line. Sounds like a wonderful thing, beautiful thing. But the Torah doesn't want us to do kindness if it endangers our lives. Hashem will take care of the poor people. There are many messengers through God. Guess what? If you don't think God can find somebody else to take care of the poor people, God told you, don't endanger your life. You can't endanger your life. Don't do that. What it's going to be with the poor people, that's God's responsibility. He'll take care of it. So Abraham's there, and he's thinking, the world, what's it going to be with the world? If I don't do this, the world, what's going to be? But Abraham realized, God doesn't need me. God's giving me the option. Abraham, you take up the option, you'll keep up the world. You don't keep up the option, all bets are off. So Abraham thinks, what an amazing opportunity. But I'm not allowed to give up my life for this. My life's in danger. I have to decline. But what's going to be with the world? Abraham says, the world, God doesn't need me to keep up his world. God can keep up the world without me. I have an obligation to make sure I stay alive. Will I stay alive? Honor Eshkol Mamre. My friends, here's my option. If this is life-threatening, I can't do this. I'm not allowed to. I'm not allowed to give my life for this. So as two friends say, you're right. This is too life-threatening for you. Decline. You don't have an obligation to do this. Mamre says it's not life-threatening. You can have trust in God in this. God has protected you in the past, and he'll protect you on this too. It's not life-threatening. Abraham decides to go ahead and do it. So it's amazing life lesson. I apply this in so many aspects of my life where you want to do so much. And sometimes there's this line where something all of a sudden becomes wrong. It becomes wrong. Whether it's forbidden, illegal, nothing really the difference, it becomes wrong. But the results that can come about through this are so amazing. But the Torah says, listen, there's a code of law. There are things that God allows us to do. There are things that God does not allow us to do. And that is my responsibility to follow this law, this book. I have to follow this. I see this amazing vision of what I can accomplish if I skirt this and I don't do this and I violate that and I could do so many wonderful things. God says that I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to violate the laws to do what you think you need to do. Oh, but if I don't do it, I'll violate this. I can't do that. Same thing. God says, I can do that without you. Yeah, Robin Hood. If you do this, the poor people will get money. And that's great. But you had to steal, and that shall not steal. You're not allowed to steal. Robin, trust me, says God. You care about the poor people. I care more about the poor people. I don't need you to do that. I can find somebody else. And throughout our entire lives, we find ourselves in situations where we can lose focus on our personal obligation of what is good for me, what is right for me, what does God want me to do? And that is where the Torah kind of becomes this barrier. Now, it's hard to do, obviously, because you have to have trust. There has to be a certain amount of trust in God that what I'm doing and what God has asked me to do is appropriate. So that is the lesson from this week's portion, for this week's class. If anybody has any applications or questions about this, I'm sure throughout our lives we find ourselves understandably struggling with this. There's
Yeah, that's an interesting lesson. So why do you think that Abraham needed to hear from Mamre to reach the conclusion that God was going to take care of him? And because he could just look at his own prior experience with
that's awesome.
The sacrifice of Isaac that had taken place. Was that before the sacrifice of Isaac? That was before.
Hasn't
right?
happened yet. Hasn't happened yet. Has not happened yet.
Isaac is not even. Okay, so
Isaac's not born yet.
Okay, right. I was wondering. I was thinking he had ready. That would be different because he could say, well, I was asked to put my own child in jeopardy and things worked, so I can kind of lean into this one. I'm not going to die from this surgery that I'm doing on myself. But he probably had some other prior experiences gone to, right?
I mean, David, that's an amazing. So what do you say, David? But clearly, meaning to really put into the equation here, right? You're asking another wonderful, amazing, insightful question on this.
Well,
right?
I mean, I guess I could answer it and say that, people need wise counsel. I mean, why not just bounce it off some people and see what they say? I mean, maybe he would have reached exactly the same conclusion anyway, without asking all these people.
So I would tell you an amazing thing. So Howard, David and Brian too, you've heard it, I've mentioned in the past, I think, the game of what would Seinfeld say? So Dave, I just want to bring to light what you just did. Okay.
What do you mean?
When you think about it for a second, you just came out with an unbelievable insight, right? That you made an observation. You said time out. God's telling Abraham to do something. So Abraham has a legitimate concern. Will God protect me? I'm going to seek advice from my friend. So we all know, like you said, like it's always good to seek counsel, right? Counsel is always a good thing. We need, sometimes even when we know the right answer, but we're a little concerned or something, we kind of need support. We need this encouragement, right? So you said, apparently, right? Apparently, you have a question, well, why does Abraham need to do this? Apparently he does. But you put it in the context. So I understand the insight here. It's one thing for Blaustein to seek advice, right? I don't know. I have my concerns. Okay, Blaustein, of course you have concerns. That's why you're Blaustein. Abraham needs to seek advice. Abraham has concerns. Even Abraham, on his experience, I don't know if we could say he has doubts, or it's a certain amount where he has this amount, this little bit lingering of it's not fulfilled. It's not total. Now we can put in qualifiers that obviously Abraham wants to go. Abraham doesn't want to do the circumcision like half-heartedly, right? We can put some qualifiers in to kind of make it a little more relatable, right? Abraham doesn't want to go in there with like doubts and do it scared or without the full intent and love and passion to perform this mitzvah. He wants to be in it the whole way, the whole heart. So maybe Abraham sensed a part of me, I want to, and I know it's there, but it's not, I'm still going to go into the situation, not where I want to be. Let me ask my friend. My friends can help me, push me over. So even Abraham in his situation, so much so for us, we go about our lives, and this is another amazing Jewish Torah value, where no matter who you are, even if you're Abraham, it doesn't hurt. There's a story on this of seeking encouragement. Oh, it's an amazing story. So, because I remember, I remember one time I'm trying to remember where I heard the story first. I remember I was a young guy in yeshiva. Sometimes yeshiva has its ups and downs. So like, it kind of feels funny sometimes where like when you speak to somebody like, I just need like a pat on the back. I just needed like don't worry, you're doing a good job. Like it feels weird to like ask somebody to do that. So I was speaking to a rabbi of mine, and he said over an amazing story that there's a Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein was one of the greatest leaders of like America. He passed away, I want to say mid 80s, I want to say. But really really Jewish law today is like because of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Just unbelievable, his impact and how much he plays in everything when it comes to Jewish law and really more than that, beyond that. So they say over there, Moshe Feinstein, when he was younger, there was another rabbi in Europe, I think his name was Chaim Ozer. Chaim Ozer was a big rabbi, a big posek, a big judge, so to speak, out in Europe at the time. And Rabbi Chaim Ozer had this question. I'm pretty sure it was Chaim Ozer. I'm pretty sure. He had this big question he had an answer to. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, who was young at the time, he was a younger fellow that didn't reach his stature. He wrote in a letter answering the question that Rabbi Chaim Ozer did not know the answer to. And Rabbi Chaim Ozer wrote back, because that's what they did back in the day. They wrote back a letter. They wrote back a letter, and Rabbi Chaim Ozer said, "It's a good teretz. It's a good answer. It's a good answer." And they say that Rav Moshe kept that letter in his drawer in his desk. And every now and then, Rav Moshe would take out the letter, even when he was the top rabbi of the world in America, Israel, America, but the top, recognized. Every now and then they take it out, looked at it. Chaim Ozer said it was a good teretz. Said it was a good answer. So right, even Moshe, everybody needs chizuk. Everybody needs encouragement. Everybody needs don't worry, everything's gonna be okay. You're doing a good job. You're doing good. Life's hard. You get slammed constantly. It's self-doubt and things don't always go the way we want. And we question and we question, we question. And so even Abraham, like you're pointing out, David, even Abraham was challenged with this. A certain amount of doubt, hesitation, a certain amount where I need the chizuk. I need my friends to tell me, you got this. Now, 2 of the 3 of them said you don't. No, 2 of the 3 really, all of them, if you think about it, all of them really did validate Abraham's concerns, right? 2 of them said your concerns are valid. You shouldn't do this. Abraham said, and Mamre says, certain brazen, Abraham, I hear, but don't worry. He'll protect you anyways. And you got this. So for us, we should always, it's not a sign of weakness. We see even the greatest people of our history have taken advantage of this amazing tool. Howard, you're unmuted. I don't know if you want to say anything. I see you're unmuted, Howard.
No, and it's interesting because, again, from a faith standpoint, I mean, as Jews, there's always stuff that goes on that you don't necessarily maybe as much question your faith, but question the plan. Is this really where I'm supposed to be headed? And like David was mentioning, I mean, we all have friends or people we reach out to, but in Abraham's case, it's interesting that clearly these are guys that are with him. So they are clearly guys that are following Hashem as well.
100%.
So,
100%,
so clearly, I mean, clearly it's kind of Abraham's inner circle. And so, but Mamre, I mean, again, it's like, clearly there's going to be some pain here, but has God let you down yet? Hashem let you down yet? And so it is just kind of one of those where, no matter whether it's self-doubt or just needing the affirmation, like you said,
right.
It's hearing the words going, what's the track record? you know.
Right. You're good.
So,
You're good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think they refer to the people as Ohavav. They were his beloved ones, his closest friends, but they say, Mamre was the Mamre. He was the man. But he really stepped up, and 100%. That is that's the value, two values. So we always remember it's not our world, right? We have to do what's right. We have to follow the right path, and we get concerned, but what's going to be if I don't do this? We have to realize it's not our world. It's not our responsibility. God will take care of it. And the second lesson is that even the greatest people of our history need that affirmation, that confirmation, that encouragement, and we can utilize it and should utilize it at any point, even for things that we kind of already know are good, but we want to make sure we do it 100%. Get that pat, get that high five, and do it full, heartily. Okay, everybody, I have a wonderful week. Any other thoughts? I don't have to run away, but any other thoughts, you can throw it out there. If not, have a great week, everybody. All the best.
Well done, Zach.